the name of Amen the Supreme, the all-powerful, the one and only true Lord, in Amen we trust, in Amen we thank, and in Amen we continue forward forever. I want to discuss this little situation that our people, so-called black people, have with reparations, and how they believe that by declaring themselves as black people, a descendant of slaves, African Americans, that they're actually going to get reparations based on this. First and foremost, black is not a real race. It is not a real nationality. It is simply a governmental the misclassification of who we are, and that was done purposely. African American is not real because our people, if you have family going back past slavery and into slavery, you can trace your family back, which is the majority of our people here in the Americas, some coming from the islands, and even them, they would still be considered American. If you have that lineage going back to slavery and past that, then that means we're not African, because there were no African slave ships that brought our people or brought our so-called people here into the Americas. Our people were already here in the Americas before the white man got here, before the Mongoloid red Native Americans, so-called Native Americans got here, who crossed the Bering Straits and came over here from Mongolia into America, where our people already were, the bronze copper-colored Mesoamericans. The Mesoamericans, who would be your Olmecs, your Aztec, your Inca, and Mayan, are the real American indigenous people, the real American Indians of this land. And if you have family going back to that point, to slavery, then 9 times out of 10, you are an American Indian. Why? Because you are linked to the Mesoamericans. You are not an American Indian by linking yourself to the so-called Native American tribes. That's not what makes us American Indians. The Native Americans came after us. And at one point in time, the Caucasians, they started referring to themselves as Native Americans. That's where that title comes from. And that also is a government title. The Native Americans are not the American Indians. The American Indians, the real American Indians, are those who are descendant of the Mesoamericans, the Olmecs, the Aztec, the Inca, and Mayan, who came into North America. The Mayans were the first ones that came from South and Central America and made their way into North America, and the Aztecs as well. The Mayan and the Aztecs, which were huge nations of people, made their way from South and Central America, fleeing the persecution of the Spanish conquistadors and these Mongolians who overran South and Central America. This is why you see a lot of these Latinos who are down in these areas in Mexico and South and Central America. They are really the descendants of the white Spanish conquistadors who came over from Spain and started, a plot to start conquering those areas right along with the Mongolian Asians who came over at the same time. And they mixed in with our people, the indigenous bronze people who were there. That's why you see Mexicans with dark brown skin, but they still have the spiky hair. Some of them have an Asian look to them, like slanted eyes, because their roots go back to Mongolia. They're not indigenous to America. The same way the Spanish conquistadors, the European Spaniards, are not indigenous. But these are the people who are trying to claim the lands of the Americas. The people who are American by nationality is you so-called black people, American indigenous people, the real American Indians, who, again, are not American indigenous because of some link to some Native Americans. You are American indigenous or American Indians because of your link to the Mesoamericans. That's what makes us American Indians. We have lineage with the Mayans, the Olmecs, the Aztec, and the Inca. Those are people in other tribal groups. You can clearly look on the Bonenpong temples, look up the Bonenpong temples, and you will see that these are so-called black people or copper-colored people on these walls. And they look a lot like the American so-called black people today. George Floyd, there's a statue of an Olmec that looks like George Floyd. There's a statue out there. I'm pretty sure if you people have roots that go back to slavery and even roots that in the West Indies, because you West Indians, you are part of the Mesoamerican heritage and tribes too. Yes, you are. You are American as well. You Jamaicans, all you West Indians and people, you are Indians as well. And we are North American Indians here in North America. We are all connected to the Mesoamericans. That's what makes us American Indians. I don't like to use the term Native American. We are not Native Americans. The natives are the people who came from someplace else, from other land masses, foreign land masses, and then they stayed here for a few generations and they started having children here, and then their children were able to claim native. You see, that doesn't mean they are indigenous to the land. There's a difference between indigenous and native. We are indigenous to this land. We did not come from Africa or no place else. Our roots go back to the beginning of this landmass known as America. In fact, there is a which they don't talk about on YouTube. They show the oldest, since you want to talk about the oldest person or the oldest living person or the face found in the Americas, was a so-called black woman or bronze copper colored woman. And you could clearly see, because when they were doing the digs and looking, you had your archaeologists and all these people doing their digs, and they found the skeletal remains of the first American, or one of the first American indigenous people here, the oldest skull found here. And when they reconstructed it and, looked up the genotype and the phenotype and they put it all together, it was a so-called black woman. I'll put that picture in this video. She's there. That's how the first Americans looked. Now, if she was here and they have her, she had people with her. She didn't get here by herself. So that just goes to show you that our real history and our real heritage as American indigenous people, the real Americans by nationality, is being hidden. I bring this up because I'm hearing people talk about reparations and how the government will not acknowledge who we are as American Indians, so-called black people here in the Americas. They won't acknowledge who we are as American Indians if we want reparations. Well, let me ask y'all something. Do they look like they acknowledging or listening to you when you're referring to yourself as black people? Do they look like they acknowledging you? No, they don't, because black is nothing. And they know it's nothing. That's why they gave you that designation, that racial misclassification as black people. There's no such thing as a black people or a black skinned people. You see, so all of these people who are piggybacking off of black, whether you call yourself a descendant of slaves or FBA, that is pure fantasy. There's no such thing as a black people. However, there is a such thing as the copper colored races, right, found here by the Europeans who were the first Americans, right? The copper colored races. That is in your definition of the word America, you see, or American. You see, when you look up the word American, you will see from the 1828 Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the definition of American: the bronze copper colored people who were aboriginals, meaning indigenous to this land, who were found here by Europeans or Caucasians who came here, found our people, and then, of course, began the process of stealing their land, setting up a counterfeit government here, right? The corporation taking their property and misclassifying them as Negroes and black people and eventually African American. That is what happened to our culture here. So if you see people out here, so-called black people, these black conscious people out here who telling us, we can't say that we American Indians because the government won't acknowledge that. Well, first and foremost, the so-called Native Americans, they are not American Indians. They're not classifying as that. And who the government is calling American Indians today are people who are not even Indian. Your Hindus, I should say, the people being referred to as Indian, they're not Indian. These are Hindus. These are people who come from a country that was originally called Hindustan before it was called India. India is not in Asia. India is here in America, and the Indians are here. That's us. The Mesoamericans are the Indians. That is what makes us Indian by heritage. Our Mesoamerican ancestry, which is bronze copper colored people. who did not come from Africa, who have no origins or ties to Africa. Our lineage and our foundation starts here in America. Now, if you're going to ask for reparations, if you were to do that, it makes more sense to ask as American Indians and stop declaring yourself black. If you were going to ask for it, I personally don't think they're going to give it. But if they do, it makes more sense to ask for it as American Indians. Why? Because there's a paper trail. There's a paper trail and a history of bronze, copper colored American Indians, which we are descendants of these people. There is a paper trail to the time in which the Europeans came here, the so-called whites came here into America and met the real Americans. Because, again, the word America comes from the Mesoamerican people. They say the Mayans, but then some people said the Nicaraguan, a tribe in Nicaragua, the bronze, copper-colored people, Amarisques. That's one of the origins, but we definitely know it didn't come from Amerigo Vespucci or Alberico Vespucci. That's his real name. That's a lie that the government tells. And how you know that it didn't come from no Amerigo Vespucci, his real name is Alberico, is because you don't know no history on this guy. If America was named after this Caucasian European named Alberico, not Amerigo, but Alberico, how come you don't know no history on him? How come you know more about Columbus than you know about him? You should know more about the man who America is supposedly named after. But they're very sketchy about that because they're lying. The U.S. government is lying to the indigenous people, the children of the indigenous people. And like I said, there's a paper trail for the American Indians who've lost their land. That's us. The Trail of Tears was really land being taken from us in the South. Farms and things that we developed, plantations and things we developed before they even got off the boats. We had the rich lands growing all these crops and food and corn and cotton. And again, when they threw our people into slavery, because that's all they did, they enslaved the indigenous people, the American Indians, the Mesoamerican people, falsely being called black today. They left a paper trail. They stole our land. They stole our land. And they calling us Indians, right? Because that's what they called us back then. We were known as the American Indians. We were not known as black or African American people. That was something they misclassified us as later. So if you got people out here, these pro-blacks out here, you got to look at them suspect when they telling you we should claim ourselves as black people. They know we're not getting nothing based on that, based on any paperwork, because there's no paper trail for black people. There's no paper trail for black people. There's no paper trail for African Americans. It's like we've been misclassified and reintroduced into the world as a people that we are not. So you cannot get anything from that. But as American Indians, we definitely would have had a better chance not to put any faith in anything these people are doing, because they're liars. I said this before and I said it again. Thieves and liars don't believe in giving nothing back. Thieves and liars do not believe in giving anything back that they stole. OK, but for cultural sake, for the sake of culture, for the sake of true knowledge of who we are as the American Indians. Yeah, we should be declaring ourselves as American Indians. Yes, we should. Yes, we should be declaring ourselves as American Indians, or at least American indigenous people. Not no African Americans, not no black people, because it makes us look like foreigners on our own land. How the hell you going to ask for reparations and you foreigners on your own land? Once you say you black and you African American, you basically saying you came from someplace else, and it leaves a window for these Caucasians to come up here and say, well, we didn't, your people in Africa sold you into slavery. We didn't have nothing to do with that. You got to take it up with the people in Africa. That's what they're going to say. We bought you, they sold you, which is a damn lie, which is a lie. See, when you say American Indian, you have more of a case saying that you're American Indian, because right there in the Merriam-Webster 1828 definition of American, you see right there that this land was inhabited by people before the so-called white man. The bronze, copper colored people, and not the so-called Native Americans that they show you today. Those are what they was calling redskin. And they not even really the redskin. But like I said, they're not the people, because if you look back, if you keep looking back, see, this is why they don't like to show you pictures of the American Indians going back past the 1800s, because the more further back you go, you see that these become bronze people. They get darker and darker. The hair gets woollier. That's your original American Indians right there. So when your family's saying we got Indian in us, they mean that we really do have that. But that's it. We're going to close out in the name of Amen, by the power of Amen. Amen we trust, and Amen we think, and Amen we continue forward forever. I'm out.
Many are called, but few were chosen. The numbers are rising and showing. Every time we gather up, you see us growing. Red tie, navy blue suits when we rollin'. Walk a straight and narrow path as if we bowling. And Amen we trust, and Amen we think, no room for hoping. Power don't play, we ain't joking. Feel the realness in my voice when it's spoken.